Hello students. So today let's continue with tracing changes through 1,000 years. In the last class we learned about two cartographers who made India's map and the difference between the two maps. We can relate the second map in a better manner because it was made in the 17th century and the present scenario is similar to what it was in 17th century. Then we also learned about new and old terminologies that with context of time the meaning of the same terminology has changed. We took example of Hinduism, India. Then we also learned about the term foreigner, the difference between term foreigner, how it was used in the past and how we use it now. We have to begin with historians and their sources. Historians use different types of sources to learn about the past depending upon the period of their study and nature of their investigation. Last year, for example, you read about rulers of Gupta dynasty and Harshvardhana. In this book, we will read about the following 1,000 years from roughly 7,000 to 700 to 1750. Historians, they use different types of sources like we studied in the second chapter. Which are the sources which can be used? Yes, tools, paintings, inscriptions, manuscripts. So historians study these type of different sources that can be that are from the past and they depend upon the period of their study. Last year we read about Gupta dynasty, Harshvardhana and all. In this year we will read about the period from 700 to 1750. How historians found out about them, who were the rulers, what did they grow, each and everything, how their economy run and things. You will notice some continuity in the sources used by historians for the study of these period. They still rely on coins, inscriptions, architecture and textual records for information. But there is also considerable discontinuity. The number and variety of textual records increased dramatically during this period. They slowly displaced other types of available information. Through this period, paper gradually became cheaper and more widely available. So, if we notice that most of the historians continue to use the sources like coins, inscriptions, architecture and textual records for the information. But there is also considerable discontinuity because since the paper from this century or from 700 and more, paper was more cheap and widely used. Hence, people started a variety of textual records, started using variety of textual records for the getting information about the past. People used it to write holy texts, chronicles of rulers, letters and teachings of saints, petitions and judicial records, and for registers of accounts and taxes. Manuscripts were collected by wealthy people, rulers, monasteries and temples. They were placed in libraries and archives. These manuscripts and documents provide a lot of detailed information to historians, but they are also difficult to use. Archive, I use the term archive. What does archive mean? Archive is a place where documents and manuscripts are stored. Today, all national and state governments have archives where they keep all their old official records and transactions. Okay, so people that started writing holy texts. They wrote chronicles of rulers. Now chronicles is their past whosoever ruled their whatever the rules they made and everything. They started writing letters, the teachings of the saints were recorded, whatever complaints, petitions, judicial records were also recorded, and even the taxes or the amount of tax, account of incoming and outgoing money was recorded in the registers. Manuscripts were collected by wealthy people or rulers or monasteries or temples, and all these manuscripts were placed in the libraries and archives. Then these manuscripts and documents, when we read, they provide a lot of information, a detailed information to historians. but it is very difficult to use because the terminologies have changed since years. Now, what is the value of paper? Compare the following. In the middle of the 13th century, a scholar wanted to copy a book, but he did not have enough paper. So he washed the writing of the manuscript he did not want, dried the paper and used it. Then a century later, that is in the 14th century, if you bought some food in the market, you could be lucky and have the shopkeeper wrapped it for you in some paper. So that is how the value of paper changed. In 13th century, it was costly and the papers were limited. But same in a century later, you could even found from the local shopkeeper as well. So that is how the value of paper changed. There were no printing press in those days, so scribes copied manuscripts by hand. If you have ever copied a friend's homework, you would know that it is not a simple exercise. Sometimes you cannot read your friend's handwriting and are forced to guess what is written. As a result, there are small but significant differences in your copy of your friend's work. Manuscripts copying is somewhat similar. As scribes copied manuscripts, they also introduced small changes, a word here, a sentence there. These small differences grew over centuries of copying until manuscripts of the same text became substantially different from one another. This is a serious problem because we rarely find the original manuscript of the author today. We are totally dependent upon the copies made by later scribes. As a result, historians have to read different manuscripts versions of the same text to guess what the author had originally written. So, in 13th century there were no printing press, so people had to write on the manuscripts. And whenever scribes copied the manuscripts, there were changes. Like for example, if you copy your friend's homework, if there is a word that you don't understand, you try to guess that word and then you write. And in that guessing work, there are chances that a word might change, a sentence might change from here, or even a word might change, or even a sentence might change. Same thing happened in manuscripts also. Though as the scribes copied those manuscripts from one to another, small changes were introduced, and sometimes these manuscripts, these small differences grew so large that until the time that one manuscript was different from another. These are the manuscripts. And then this became a serious problem because today we rarely have the original manuscript of the author. The manuscript which we might read today is completely different from the original author, and hence we are totally dependent upon the copies made by the later scripts. We are not dependent on the original author, and as a result, historians have to read different manuscript versions to guess what was originally written or what was the actual thing that happened in that time. On occasion, authors revised their chronicles at different times. The 14th century chronicler Ziauddin Barani wrote his chronicle first in 1356 and another version 2 years later. The two differ from each other, but the historians did not know about the existence of the first version until the 1960s. It remained lost in the large library collections. So, there were occasions where authors revised their own books. They changed certain things. And here they have given one example of the chronicle Ziauddin Barani. He was there in the 14th century. He wrote his first chronicle in 1356 and another chronicle in 2 years later, so 1358. They both differ from one another, and historians did not know about the original or the first version of his chronicle until 1960s because it was lost in the huge library collections. And hence then we can predict that there might have been many chronicles or many manuscripts which we are not aware about. Then there came new social and political groups between 700 to 1750. The study of the 1,000 years between 700 and 750 is a huge challenge to historians largely because of the scale and variety of developments that occurred over the period. At different moments in this period, new technologies made their appearance, like the Persian wheel in irrigation, the spinning wheel in weaving, and firearms in combat. New foods and beverages arrived in the subcontinent: potatoes, corn, chilies, tea, and coffee. Remember that all these innovations, new technologies, and crops came along with people who brought other ideas with them as well. As a result, this was the period of economic, political, social, and cultural changes. And you will learn about some of these changes in chapters 5, 6, and 7. So, talking about the new and social political groups, there were changes, and the historians have a huge challenge to interpret the information between 700 to 1715, because variety of developments took place at that time. Like different changes were introduced, or they were observed. Like there was a Persian wheel which was used in irrigation, and at the same time spinning wheel was used in weaving. And then there were firearms that was used by combat. Then new foods and beverages were introduced, like in the subcontinent of India, like potatoes, corn, chilies, tea, and coffee. Remember, they were not grown in India before that. They were introduced by the foreigners who came here and settled. And all these innovations, that is new technologies and crops, came with the people who brought other ideas also along with them. And because of all these things, there was a period where social, economic, political, and cultural changes took place. I hope you are clear with this part. Moving further, this was also the period of great mobility. Now, mobility is movement. Groups of people traveled long distances in search of opportunity. The subcontinent held immense wealth and the possibilities for people to carve a fortune. One group of people who became important in this period were Rajputs, a name that was derived from Rajputra, the son of ruler. Between the 8th and the 14th centuries, the term was applied more generally to a group of warriors who claimed Kshatriya caste status. The term included not just rulers and chieftains, but also soldiers and commanders who served in the armies of different monarchs all over the subcontinent. A chivalric code of conduct, that is extreme valor and a great sense of loyalty, were the qualities attributed to Rajputs by their poets and bards. Other groups of people such as Marathas, Sikh, Jat, Ahoms, and Kayasthas, that is a caste of scribes and secretaries, also used the opportunity of the age to become politically important. So the period between 700 to 1750 was also the period of movement. Many people traveled from long distances in search of opportunity, because the Indian subcontinent had immense wealth and they thought that they can shift here and make their fortune, they can carve their fortune, they can make their future. And one of the most important people who became one such group who became important in this time were Rajputs, who also derived their name from Rajputra, that is the son of ruler. And between the 8th and the 14th century, this term was applied more generally to a group who were warriors and who claimed themselves as Kshatriyas. They owned the status of Kshatriya, that is caste status. And what does Kshatriya means? Kshatriya means not only just rulers, but all those soldiers, commanders who served in the armies of different monarchs. Monarchs are rulers all over the subcontinent. So whosoever fought were basically called as Kshatriya. And the code of conduct was that they were extreme valor, extreme aggressive, and they had great sense of loyalty. They were very loyal to their monarch. These were the qualities that were given as the proof of Rajput according to the poets and bards. Then the other group of people were Marathas, Sikh, Jats, Ahoms and Kayasthas, who also utilized this opportunity to become politically important. Throughout this period, there was a gradual clearing of forests and extension of agriculture, a change faster and more complete in some areas other than in others. Changes in their habitat forced many forest dwellers to migrate. Others started tilling the land and became peasants. These new peasant groups gradually began to be influenced by regional markets, priests, monasteries and temples. They became part of large complex societies and were required to pay taxes and offer goods and services to local lords. As a result, significant economic and social differences emerged among peasants. Some possessed more productive land, others also kept cattle. Some combined artisanal work with agricultural activity during the lean season. As society became more differentiated, people were grouped into jatis or subcastes and ranked on the basis of their backgrounds and their occupations. Ranks were not fixed permanently and varied according to the power, influence and resources controlled by members of the jati. The status of the same jati could vary from area to area. Okay? Though this period and when the period started, there was change in the agricultural system also. Forests were cleared and then on that land agricultural was practiced. The change was more fast and more complete in some areas. And there was change in their habitat. Habitat is the environment of a region and the social and economic lifestyle of that particular place. The habitat of people changed. Forest dwellers were forced to change their occupation and they had to migrate. Some of them started tilling the land and they become peasants. And these new peasants, they slowly and gradually began to be influenced by the local market, whatever the things were demanded in the local market or the regional market, or by priests or monasteries or temples. They started changing according to them. Then they became a large part of the complex societies, and all these peasants were also required to pay taxes, and they were supposed to offer goods and services to the local lords. And because of these, the economic and social differences emerged because some peasants could afford, some could not. Some peasants possessed more productive land, or while others also kept cattle, or some of them combined the artisanal work along with their agricultural activity. So as society, there were differences in the society. People were grouped according to the subcaste or jatis, and they were ranked on the basis of their backgrounds or on the basis of their occupation, backgrounds in terms of social, political, economical. These ranks were not fixed. They varied according to the power or the influence or the resources that were controlled by them. And the status of the same jati was not same in all the areas. It changed from area to area. Jatis framed their rules and regulations to manage the conduct of their members. These regulations were enforced by an assembly of elders, described in some areas as the Jati Panchayat. But Jatis were also required to follow the rules of their villages. Several villages were governed by together they were only one small unit of a state. So jatis, these group of people who were jatis, they framed their own rules and regulations, like how they should live or their lifestyle and everything. And these regulations were generally enforced, or they were forced by the assembly of the elder members, described in some areas as the Jati Panchayat. These elder members were at many places described as the Jati Panchayats. And these Jatis were also required to follow the rules of their villages. And all this together, these different Jatis became a small unit of a state. We will continue with this part in the next class. Thank you.